Welcome to Uncorked, Wine, Business, and Life with Bill Green. I'm Jerrold Colton, and as always, Bill, we have an incredible guest on today, one of your neighbors down here in Boca Raton, Florida.
I am so honored to have my friend Walter Bond, who I've only known a few years, and we're sitting here in our neighborhood, and we just have a good time, and I recognize Walter because I think a lot of my viewers know that I'm a basketball junkie, and I go, man, I recognize you. And he says, well, my name's Walter Bond. And, you know, Walter Bond grows up in Chicago, goes undrafted, 1991, plays for the Wichita Falls Texans year one.
Yep.
He's got tenacity. And next thing you know, he's playing for the Utah Jazz.
Yep.
And you played for just the Jazz and the Pistons. You had a five.
And the Mavericks.
Right. Mavericks was first. Right?
Yeah.
Sorry, my bad. And Mavericks was, you got drafted by Dallas, and 6'5", 200-pound shooting guard. And so, and then why Walter and I have this great line of communication and friendship is because the man motivates me. You guys can go on walterbond.com. He's one of those amazing motivational speakers, speaks for major corporations, pumps up their people, pumps up their salespeople. And when I need a little juice, I just go on walterbond.com and get that motivation.
I love it.
Walter, thank you for being here. And give us the, I know you didn't grow up with a silver spoon.
Yeah.
So let's talk about you.
Well, I'm from Chicago, inner city. And by the way, I'm a wine junkie, so I guess we...
Yeah, well, that's why we're here, buddy.
I love going out to Napa, and coming to your winery is pretty cool in New Jersey. But being a kid on the south side of Chicago, my parents were teachers. My dad was a high school principal. My mom was a teacher. And I did great in sports. I was named after my uncle who played Major League Baseball. He was 6'7", home run hitter, went by Walt Bond. And he was Aaron Judge before Aaron Judge. And what happened, he died of leukemia at 29 years old, playing for the New York Mets. And so my dad named me after his brother. So growing up, baseball is my first love. And to this day, people tell me I should have played baseball. So I chose University of Minnesota because of Dave Winfield. I wanted to be Dave Winfield. But what happened, I was so focused on sports that I kind of got distracted academically. And my parents were teachers. And so I went to this top academic school. It's called Whitney Young. Michelle Obama went there, and all of the smartest kids in Chicago went there. And it was the first time I failed. I literally had a 2.1 GPA and flunked out of my first high school. And my dad was a high school principal in the hood. And I transferred to my dad's high school. And every day on the way to school was a coaching session. So now he's not just my dad, he's my high school principal. And the blessing was he's an expert in developing city kids, and he realized his son needed some coaching, right? So for 2 years, it was a ride to school with my high school principal, and it really helped transform my mind academically. I had it in sports. Sports was a natural thing. In fact, my big sister played college ball with Jerrold Miller at USC, won 2 national championships. So I come from that kind of family, but my parents were about education, and I was not toting the line. And my father made a decision to transfer me to his high school. And that was a great learning experience because going to his high school and contrasting that with my first high school, I was the only kid who paid for lunch. Many of my high school teammates had fathered children in high school. And it was just a real education on inner city survival. And it was a great opportunity for me to learn people. And some of these kids were amazing. They were basically raising themselves and went on to do some incredible things. And some of them just kind of succumbed to life and pressure. But to see my father be a leader on the west side of Chicago and have an impact on the kids that he could save was incredible. But I benefited the most. I was able to see and understand what my parents were teaching us as kids. My mom and dad are from the South, and education was the way out, from the South. And my dad played a little pro ball. And so he was like, look, dude, I don't care how good you are. You need an education for when basketball's over. And after failing in my first high school, I'm just thankful my parents were teachers and they were able to really cultivate me. And now I'm a thought leader, which is funny. But at the time, I just needed some extra nurturing and leadership from mom and dad.
So what did you play both baseball and basketball?
I played it all. I played baseball, basketball, football. I was a tight end on the football team that called me hands. I didn't drop a thing. And my high school football coach swears I should have played football. I played with the number one pick in the NFL draft in 1992, a guy named Russell Maryland. And played baseball, batted over 500 my senior year, set a playoff record. I struck out 17 in a 7-inning game. And as a pitcher, yeah, but that wasn't my main position. But basketball, you know, I mean, I was one of the top players in the country in basketball. So my biggest dilemma, honestly, growing up was what sport? Wow. And I think that really distracted me academically because I would daydream, am I going to play in the major leagues? And I would see my uncle's oil painting over the fireplace. I'm his namesake. Am I going to play football? I mean, they call me hands. I don't drop a pass. Am I going to play basketball? You know, at that time, Michael Jordan was breaking in Chicago with the Bulls. And so I had a real dilemma on what sport am I going to play? And when you're the youngest in an athletic family that has already produced pro athletes and Division I champions, and they told me I was the best athlete in the family, I was distracted. And so when I failed at my first high school, my mother said something to me, and I share this on stage, because when I gave her my last report card at Whitney Young, she cried. And you know, I'm a mama's boy. And she said, baby, if the teacher gives out A's, you know you can get one. And I was like, that was what she said to me. You know, if the teacher gives out A's, you know you can get one. And the emotion I felt was like, man, I'm a weak link on this team. You know, my brother did well academically. He got an academic scholarship. My sister did well academically. My parents were teachers. I got it done on the athletic field. I did great socially, but I was the weak link on this team academically. When I saw my mom cry, that just did something to me. And from that day on, you know, I started studying and being serious about school because I realized it's my family's core values, and I wasn't completely bought in. And finally, through failure and adversity, I eventually bought in.
You know, normally, guys who have a choice between baseball, football, and basketball don't choose football because it's the hardest on the body. And if you really have the chance to go pro, as you did, and if you made it in the NBA, I have no doubt you could have made it in football. But you don't make as much money, you beat your body up, and your career is generally shorter. So I think you made the right choice. But at your size, you probably are better, more prone to being a better football or baseball player long term.
I think it was my body type. You know, I just lost 55 pounds, and I'm not really built like a traditional basketball player. I mean, you know, no, I mean, my biggest challenge in basketball was losing weight. You know, I always had to lose weight, and even my college basketball coach was like, look, son, the NBA thinks you're a football player trying to play basketball. So a lot of my friends that knew me growing up and coaches thought that naturally, dude, you're either a football player or a baseball player. But being a Chicago kid, it's all about basketball. You're talking about Isaiah Thomas, Mark Aguirre, Terry Cummings, Michael Jordan got to the Bulls. Basketball runs Chicago.
But didn't you think about Charles Barkley at that time? Because he's playing, right? And he's a 6'5" big guy.
Well, yes. I mean, he was a round mound of rebound. But, you know, Barkley was explosive, though. I mean, I wasn't that kind of athlete. I mean, he was a big boy, but he could move. I mean, in college, I mean, I remember when they played Kentucky, and Kentucky had Sam Bowie and Mel Turpin. I'll never forget that game where Barkley came out and caught Mel Turpin's shot at 6'5", 6'6". So Barkley had freakishly long arms, very explosive athletically. We're seeing Zion Williamson, you know, kind of be a same kind of player. But I was a big boy. I just was not explosive athletically. So naturally, baseball and football made more sense based on my body type. But Chicago is run by basketball gods, and my opportunity came in basketball.
I'm curious how your parents dealt with you growing up when you're slacking somewhat in the academics, because clearly it wasn't about your intellect. It was definitely about probably application, right? But it is also hard to be a 3-sport athlete and whatever. I mean, as you say, I'm looking out the window. You know, I remember doing that. I wasn't thinking about what choice of sports I'm going to play pro, but I would look out, and this concentration, there could be maturity. Did they have to take sports away from you a little because the emphasis was to get on the scholastic, or they recognized that still was your future?
They never took it away. They threatened, you know, obviously. And but they never took it away because I was a good kid. You know, it wasn't like I got in trouble. I was nice. I got along with people. I was a family comedian. I kept everybody laughing. And I went to a tough academic school. I mean, these are the smartest kids in Chicago. So it wasn't like I was just at a normal, it's like I went to a high school Harvard, and these kids are doctors and lawyers. These were the smartest kids in Chicago. And what happened to really get my dad's involved, I applied for Whitney Young and didn't get accepted. And so he wrote a letter and got me in, right? And so when I went in, since I didn't get accepted legitimately, I was a little defeated mentally already because in my mind, I'm not smart enough for these guys. These guys are smarter than me. And so my dad, being a high school principal, wrote a letter and got me in. So when I began to fail, I think he took some responsibility because he was like, oh shoot, I kind of pushed them toward that direction. So it wasn't like they were mad at me or angry. I think they were disappointed. And I think they were a little frustrated that they knew that I was smart. I was not applying myself, but I think that teamwork with the family, came into play. And my old man was like, to my mom, was like, give him to me. My mother was like, no, like your high school's in the hood. He'll be fine, trust me. And it was a recalibration that was risky. In fact, a lot of people in Chicago was like, Willie, are you crazy? Why would you have your son go to that school? And my dad was like, look, if I'm gonna be the principal of this school, I gotta believe in it enough that my own child should go here. Or I shouldn't even be a principal. And he made a statement that was like, whoa, he believes in the school. And it just helped the whole community to be
Good.
honest.
And then you went up at Minnesota. Did you get scholarships to other schools? And then what about Minnesota made you choose it? And had you already made your basketball decision, or was that part of it?
Yeah, I mean, luckily I got my academic life together pretty rapidly. I turned a 2.1 into a 2.9 pretty quickly, and I began getting recruited across the country. Now, a little side note, my dad had a great basketball team, and I had played it with another guy named Randy Brown who played in the NBA, played with the Chicago Bulls and Sacramento Kings. So the benefit of going to his high school, I was able to get myself together academically, but he had a very good basketball team. And we would play all the top teams around the country. And one weekend, we played King High School. At that time, they were the number one high school in the country. They had the number one player in the country. We beat them, and I outplayed a guy named Marcus Liberty, who at that time was the number one player in the country and was a high school phenom. And my recruiting exploded, so it really was a great move to go to my dad's school. And all of a sudden, Michigan came in, UCLA, Arizona State, Wisconsin, Minnesota. But during my recruiting process, my dad said something to me that was just life-changing. He says, hey, man, this is a 40-year decision. I was like, what? This is not a 4-year decision. This is a 40-year decision. Choose the school that's going to bless you 40 years from now. Wow. Because my sister went to USC and never came back home to Chicago. And I'm the youngest. So my dad was like, look, you're not coming home. I know it. So you choose a school that's going to bless you 40 years from now. I go on my recruiting trip. Minneapolis has 22 Fortune 500 companies, great business environment. We're the only Division I school in the state. This is before the Timberwolves. And that's why Kevin McHale and Michael Thompson and Trent Tucker and all these old school guys, we kind of walked around like pro athletes, and you had access to the business community. And that's why I chose Minnesota. It had an incredible business community. And they sold us on, look, son, if you don't play pro ball, you can come back here and get settled and have a nice career in business. And honestly, to get a chance to play in the Big Ten and have a wonderful business community, that's why I chose Minnesota. And Dave Winfield was there too. So
there you go. So you leave Utah, your last NBA team, but you hang around the basketball scene for about 4 or 5 years. So talk about where you were playing and what you were doing in that stint, and what made you decide to just say, hey, you know what, I'm going to do something else, and talk about what was next.
Wow, great question. Well, here's the truth. When I went to my dad's high school, he had me write down my life goals. And that was one of the exercises in my coaching session on my way to my new high school. And I had to write down my entire life. And I was like, okay, Dad, I'm going to graduate college in 4 years. I'm going to play in the NBA. And I'm going to make more money in business than I did in sports. So that was the thing that I wrote down when I was 16, 17 years old. So when I got done with the NBA, Jerry Sloan cut me one day, and it took 5 seconds. He says, hey man, check with the trainer. He has your plane ticket. We're going in a different direction. That's all he said to me. It was devastating. And I was just like, what? Like, wow, I never knew how heartless sometimes getting cut out the NBA can be. And it was in front of the team right after practice. He called me over. I ran over to, hey coach, what's going on? Check with the trainer. He has your plane ticket. We're going in a different direction. And I cried like a little baby. I was like, once I got back to my home.
Yeah. Did you see anything coming up to that?
A little bit. We had a guy named Jamie Watson, who was a second-round pick. He was incredibly athletic. Karl Malone and Stockton were getting older. And so they were trying to get more athletic around Stockton and Karl. And I'm an average athlete. I'm a good basketball player with a high IQ, but I'm not dunking on you.
You're average athlete for NBA.
Yes, yeah, NBA. yeah.
So definitely in this group, you're in the upper third.
But I understood that. I knew they were trying to get more athletic around Carl and Stockton with younger players. So I knew that I was a little, I didn't quite fit that. But they liked me, and I was a good ball player. They were trying to get this young kid, Jamie Watson, a chance. So I didn't think I was going to get cut. I knew it was a possibility, but it happened. And so I ended up going overseas. I played in Italy, Greece, played in Germany.
And how were those experiences?
Great. I mean, the tough thing about going overseas is like really getting your mind around, I'm not going to play in the NBA. And as a little kid, you dreamt about the NBA. You didn't dream about Italy or Greece or Germany. You didn't dream about the CBA. You dreamt about the NBA. So when you finally sign a contract and acquiesce, it's emotional, right? And so you're on this long flight, like, what am I doing? Where am I going? You get over there and it's a language barrier, and they make a big deal when you get there. As soon as I got off the plane, there was a press conference and people grabbed around.
And the American's a big guy coming.
You're a big thing over there. You're a big thing. And I played in Greece with Dominic Wilkins and David Rivers, if you guys remember that. Walter Berry from St. John's. All these guys are over there, and but then you started enjoying the culture and the food. It's like, I'm making great money. I'm living in a different country. My wife's enjoying herself. We started having kids, and you did that for a while.
I think it's so cool, though. You play professional basketball in Italy. Speaking of wine.
Speaking of wine, that's a good place. When we're talking about Italy, I got to go back to the NBA for just a second. But let's take a sip here. So the wine with the ring around it on your side.
Okay, right here?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a 22 Cabernet Sauvignon by Saddlehill. In Voorhees, New Jersey. Is it cheers, my friend?
Cheers.
Zone.
Cheers. All right.
That's nice.
That's good stuff, man. That's good stuff.
Right?
Right.
Worth $40. Worth $40.
Oh, wow. Great value.
Right? Well, we're going to try another one later.
Love it.
It's worth like $140.
And Bill, every time I try that,
it keeps getting, it's, we open it and now it's breathing. It's better than it was last time. But so you're 6'5", you're in the NBA. There had to be a time or multiple times that you had to guard Michael Jordan.
Yes.
We've had on this show his agent, David Falk. So we had a lot of Michael Jordan stories. Talk about that, because, man, if you're saying you're not explosive, you're guarding probably the most explosive athlete of all time.
Absolutely. And I'm a Chicago kid, right? So growing up, my brother and I would argue with my father because he loved Oscar Robertson. My dad was an Oscar Robertson
the big
guy.
O.
Yes. And so me and my brother and I and my dad, we would have heated arguments about who was better, Michael Jordan or Oscar. And toward the end of Michael Jordan's career, my dad kind of went silent. And for my brother and I, we felt like we won the argument. Right?
He wasn't going to concede.
Yeah, he didn't say a word, but after a while, he stopped projecting Oscar as the best. And I think my father realized, like, okay, this dude is different, right? So now, with that being said, one day I'm playing him. One day I got to guard him. So it's like, oh, snap. This is Mike, and he has such a persona. And his dark skin is almost intimidating. Like, he's just looking at you like a warrior predator. And it's like, okay, here he is. But as an athlete, once you kind of get over that, it's like, okay, let's go. Because if you don't think that way, you don't really deserve to be there. And people will ask me, what was it like to play against Michael Jordan? I tried to kick his butt. Now, I didn't talk any smack to him. I didn't try and provoke him, because that's the worst thing you can do is provoke Mike. Because he needed that extra challenge, because him and Kobe are probably two of the most competitive athletes the NBA ever saw. And I have a theory. I want you guys' feedback on this. I think the NBA, and even professional sports, are made up of either entertainers, performers, or competitors. When I think about Kobe and Michael Jordan, those are competitors, right?
Killers.
When I think about entertainers, I'm thinking about Deion Sanders, I'm thinking about Barkley, Muhammad Ali. These guys were performers. They compete, but primarily they were more performers. And then Michael Jordan, Allen Iverson, these guys are just fierce competitors, right? So Michael Jordan is a fierce competitor, and that's who you don't want to provoke. I mean, he's a killer, and he can drop 70 on you, 80. I mean,
like that.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to provoke Michael Jordan. He's the only guy that I wouldn't try to provoke. Everybody else, I was like, come on, bring it on, but not Mike.
So you have this really nice, career. You decide it's time to come back to the U.S. and what's next?
Great question. I was flying back from Germany, had a great year in Germany, played for Bear Aspirin. I took a team that was supposed to finish in last place. We went to the Final Four in Germany. The team loved me. They sent me extra money above my bonus, and it was just wonderful. But my wife was a corporate woman. I had 3 kids, and we're flying back. And I'm looking around on this long flight, and I was like, I'm done. I didn't say a word to my wife, and I was just like, I'm done. And what happened when I got back to Minneapolis, we had built a house in Minneapolis. I called my agent, and I said, look, man, I think I'm done, but I want to make one more run at the NBA. He's like, okay. He called around, and the Utah Jazz, my old team, was like, look, we have a kid named Shandon Anderson. If he signs elsewhere, we're going to bring you in. You are? Because Utah was notorious for bringing players back. So that whole summer, it was Utah Jazz or bust for me. And I'm working out, I'm in great shape. And there was a kid in the NBA named Chris Carr. I don't know if you remember this name. Now, he played at Southern Illinois. And he knew the deal. And I guess the ESPN put on a sticker, Shannon Anderson signs with Houston. And I'm downtown Minneapolis working out, and he came over to me, he said, look, dude, Shannon signed with Houston, you're good. I left the gym, ran home, knowing I'm flying to Salt Lake today. I dropped my gym bag, ran in the house, told my wife, Shannon signed with Houston, we're going back to Utah. I called my agent, he says, Walter, I got bad news. They changed their mind. Instead of an extra guard, they want an extra big guy. And they're gonna sign Pete Chilcutt. I don't know if you guys remember that name.
Oh my God, I do remember.
And I'm telling you guys, it was like someone punched me in the face. I dropped my gym bag and just plopped on the couch and cried. I'm done. That's it. I'm done. I told my wife finally, I said, I'm done. Because I've been thinking it the whole time, never shared it with her. And she was like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? I was like, I don't know, but I'm done. And that was it. I was decisive. And luckily, about a year later, the Minnesota Timberwolves called me. And I'm thinking, oh, I'm making a comeback. But it was the communications director. And he was like, hey, this is, forgot his name. I'm the director of communications and broadcast for the Timberwolves. We're hearing you're back in town. Like, yeah. Weren't you a communications major? Yeah, absolutely. Well, would you like to broadcast for the Minnesota Timberwolves? And I was like, why not? I'm sitting here at home trying to figure out my next move. I got my degree and wasn't doing a whole lot. I was just trying a bunch of little different things. And they hired me like 2 weeks later. And so I broadcasted on radio a year, and then I did TV for a year. And I did not enjoy broadcasting.
No,
I did not enjoy broadcasting.
What about it?
I don't know, man. I'm digging the mic. I like it. I don't know. Man.
Here's why.
You're watching basketball, talking about what you know.
Let me school you guys. Let me school you guys. Now, when you work for a small market team, it's very different than if you work for the Knicks, the Lakers, the Bulls, probably Philly. Minnesota's a small market team. So the pay was not what I thought it would be. But the lifestyle is you're living an NBA lifestyle because you're broadcasting every single game. You had to travel. And it was so intense, I didn't have time to do anything else to augment that income.
And you had 3 kids.
I had 3 kids, and I was, it didn't fit the bill for me to replace income. And the kicker was, have you guys ever seen NBA game notes? They're this thick.
Yep.
They're this thick, and you're supposed to study game notes. You have to know what high school Allen Iverson went to. You have to know his cousin was Michael Vick, or you had to know all this stuff. And I was like, one, I don't care that much. And 2, you had to know all this stuff. You had to know that they played for a legendary high school. You had to know that he was an All-American in football. You had to know all this, this stealth of data. But what happens over time as you become a broadcaster, you begin to accumulate it and you got it. But my first year, it was like, oh shoot, it was overwhelming. Then I had to go in the locker room, do post-game interviews. Some of these younger players didn't know I played in the league. They're kind of young, they're kind of naive, kind of cocky. I'm like, dude, you cannot guard me right now, chump. You know what I mean? And they'd be a little disrespectful sometimes, and KG was very moody. And it was just like, and here's the kicker. When you do radio, people don't know this. You're on air for like 4 hours, maybe 5 hours. You have to do the pregame show. You have to do the first half. Then you have to do the halftime show. Then you have to do the second half. And when everybody goes home, guess what? You have to do the post-game show. So you're literally at the arena at 5:30, and you're not leaving until 10:30, and you only get to go to the restroom one time.
Walter, I gotta believe if you did that somewhere else other than Minnesota, it might have been a different experience. But regardless, it was still in the NBA, and that was your experience. And I understand that you've had to figure out, this isn't exactly for me. Now, one quick thing though, and this is quick, but the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl in Minnesota in February 2018. I'd never been there during the winter.
Yeah.
Okay. That was the coldest I've ever been. I haven't thawed out yet. And we're 7 years later. And walking down the street there, I literally didn't know if I could get from here to where Bill
Well, that's
is.
why the city was
You gotta
built
take the
with
tunnels. You gotta
I
take the
call it the
skyways.
habit trail.
Yeah.
What is that?
Skyways.
The skyway from building to building. Like you go shopping, you're not getting.
Well, I live there. And the other thing, you've got these statues like Mary Tyler Moore all over.
Yeah.
I realized they're not statues. Those people froze to death.
Yeah, they have the summer is magnificent there. Matter of fact, I had an investment there, and I wasn't on the board, but I made an investment. And my only trip to the company for due diligence was in the summer, and it really is nice.
Beautiful.
You got to get.
Well,
the
let me say this.
But there's 8 other months.
Minnesotans are smart. They know when to invite you to town, right? So if they invite you from May through October, you're not even thinking about the weather,
beautiful.
And so you kind of stay away from the other months. But outside the weather, it's incredible.
nice people.
Yeah. Outside the weather, it's incredible community. But I didn't like broadcasting, and I didn't see that as my long-term fit. The good news, part of my contract, I had to go around town and speak on behalf of the Timberwolves, and I loved that. And I was like, you know what? My college basketball coach, Clem Haskins, told me when I left the University of Minnesota I should be a motivational speaker. So when I started speaking on behalf of the Wolves, I was like, you know what, babe, I looked at my wife because she was in sales. She did pharmaceutical sales and she worked for Dr. Pepper in sales. I was like, let's launch a motivational speaking business. And she was like, her dad's an entrepreneur. And she was like, cool. And the rest is history, as they say. So I thank the Timberwolves for really ending basketball for me, where I could walk away on my own terms, which is cool. But then also giving me exposure to being a speaker and really transitioning me into my purpose.
Oh, man, you're awesome. You're awesome
Thank you.
when you do your thing. And I was on your podcast or your show a couple of years ago. Yeah. And you get really jazzed when you hear Walter talk. Yeah. I want you to talk about, you do work for all kinds of companies, service companies, companies that sell products. Is it mostly salespeople that you're trying to motivate, or is it everybody across the board?
At this point, it's all across the board. So this week I spoke for Tenneco, which is one of the largest automotive engine part manufacturers in the world. And it was all their leaders. It was all their leaders. It was 400. It was all their leaders. It was 400 leaders. My event before that was a sales team. My next 2 events are going to be sales teams. So it depends. I'll do associations. I'll do leadership events. Sometimes it's just employees, all company events. It really doesn't matter. All of my topics are pretty general. They're pretty fundamental. And it just depends on the client.
Well, Bill, it's interesting. And I'm interested in how Walter answered that, because we've had so many different guests here on Uncorked. Yet there's always common themes of success, common themes of entrepreneurship and adventure and all those things. And although your career started in the sports world, I wondered how different it is when you're speaking motivationally to other people. It's sort of all the same thing in human beings, isn't it?
Well, a great speaker is a storyteller, and your message is in your story. I call it the hot dog theory. Being a Chicago kid, I love hot dogs. If you really think about a great hot dog, it's a combination of a great frankfurter and a perfect bun. And so a speaker, we coach a lot of speakers, and I teach them the hot dog theory, that your frankfurter is your content or the lesson you want to teach, and your bun is the story you wrap it in. So a great speaker always has a great story, but they also have the lesson in the story, and they make the lesson clear in the story. Because sometimes you eat a hot dog and the frankfurter is too big, sometimes it's too little, sometimes the bun is too big, the bun is too little. You want the perfect frankfurter and the perfect bun.
And where you can still get that mustard and relish.
Oh, that's when you get fancy. That's when you get fancy.
Leave that alone.
But everyone has a story, right? And so what makes us unique as speakers is no one can implicate or duplicate your story. And when you have unique stories, and like all of the speakers we coach, they all have a unique story, and people love your story, right? And so that's what really makes your life special, when you can share your story with an audience and make it relatable to what they're dealing with and give them some real value.
Bill, I'm such a sports guy, fan, and so are you. An admirer of all of them. I never would let my kids ever boo. I said, they're all great. Don't ever, we're never booing. It takes so much. And I really believe what it took for anybody, and you, Walter Bond, to make it to the NBA and keep making it. I mean, you're undrafted. The odds are so against you from the start. Yeah. And you made the NBA. You lasted for a few years, and you played overseas. Each one of those teams make it, because you said Jerry Sloan calls you over and he cuts you. But that can happen to you any day. Yeah. And you got it there to be in that situation. I think making it through that, you can make it through anything.
That's part of my story. I didn't start in college. I came off the bench. It wasn't even like I was a college basketball star, right? Every year I would sit down with my coach and say, hey, coach, what do I need to do to play in the NBA? So my freshman year, I don't play at all. My sophomore and junior year, I was a top 6 man in the country. Then my senior year, I broke my foot twice. So my story did not say NBA. So when I share my story with my audiences, they know that no matter where their situation is or where their life is, they still can win. And to me, as long as there's breath in my body, I was going to go to the NBA. I have a buddy of mine named Mike Davis who took over for Bobby Knight at Indiana. He was one of my CBA coaches in Wichita Falls. And we laugh about it. He's like, man, you scared me. I said, what do you mean? He's like, man, you wanted the NBA so bad that I was scared for you. I said, what do you mean? Like, you just wanted it so bad. I'm like, I wasn't suicidal or anything. I was just focused, right? And I wanted it. That was my childhood dream, And when you're growing up and I'm thinking about baseball, basketball, or football, I chose basketball, and I was like, I got to make it work. I could not have lived with myself. I could have, but I didn't want to live with myself and not achieve my goal. That drove me.
There's such a common theme, right? So we've had about 10 episodes right now, Uncorked, and
great name, by the way. I love that name.
It's just that passion, that deep desire to succeed, and the challenge is just making you stronger, and that's exactly your story. Hey, let's grab this wine, the second wine, and this is a 2018 Cabernet Sauvignon, albeit from Napa Valley.
Oh wow!
So we're going to taste a little bit of this. It's a little bit different. So we're talking about 5 years younger than the first wine, the Saddlehill wine, but it's a little darker and got a little more fruit.
That's smooth.
It's good, right?
That's
a good one.
That's smooth.
You ever sneak to Napa when you were playing like a road trip to play the Golden State Warriors or anything?
Well, wine kind of grew on me later.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you a funny story. My wife and all of her friends were going to Napa, and my job was to be the driver while they drink wine.
Designated.
Next thing I know, I'm in the winery with them and had a great time. And I was like, I had never had like a high quality wine hit my palate. And I was like, oh, this is different. Now I get it. And so I kind of stumbled into Napa, and now I love wine, a good quality wine. And unfortunately, I know the difference now. Right?
That's the problem, right?
Yes.
And especially, okay, so I didn't grow up in the inner city, but I grew up with zero money, right? Yeah. So to spend, even today, walking into a store or to a restaurant, I'm not going to buy a $200 bottle of wine that I know is $40 in the liquor store. It just kind of rubs me the wrong way. Right. But you drink, those nights drink tequila or vodka because, you got to wait for your good wine that you paid regular price for. So, no, we love drinking wines with you and Antoinette. You're the best, man.
Thanks,
Thank
man.
you so much. And thank you,
Bill.
Thank you so much for being with us. Jerrold.
Walter, you said you wrote down some goals that your father had you write down when you were about 16 years old. And you achieved the first couple, which were incredible goals to set at 16. And then you wrote, what was the last one you wrote about after your career?
We wrote in a couple of books. The first book was All But Stink, how to live your best life and eliminate excuses. And then we wrote Swim, how a shark, a sucker fish, and a parasite teach you leadership, mentorship, and the next level of success. That's probably our bestseller. And my current book is called Cultivate, the 6 non-negotiables of a winning team. And I'm finishing up our fourth book. It's called Accelerate. And it's all about business growth.
But the question is, how are we doing compared to making money. Have you hit the goal? Making more money in your second career?
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
And
Yeah,
We knew the answer.
yeah, we hit that in the first 3 years.
And really hard to do. And a goal that I guarantee most NBA players wouldn't set for themselves.
Oh no, their goal would be to keep their money. Can I not blow my money?
Some
right?
of their money is crazy now.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But Walter, on that note, whenever I meet with a young athlete who's trying to go pro and about representation, I always tell them that their career after their sport their life will hopefully be a lot longer than their life playing the sport. And for you, I mean, basketball was everything. Making the NBA was everything. Right. But by the time you were 30, you were done with basketball from the playing standpoint. Yeah. And thank God there's a lot longer life to live after that.
Right. And I'm thankful to my dad, you know. I mean, he really got me on the right path, and he explained to me the value of education, and it happened just the way he planned it, you know, and it was a beautiful thing. And my last story, you know, when I left college, I broke my foot twice, and I had a job offer to be a hospital administrator. And he calls me, he says, "What's next?" I had a cast on my foot. I said, "Dad, I'm going to be a hospital administrator." He says, "Hey, man, do you think you're good enough to play in the NBA?" And I was like, "What?" I was like, "Dad, I didn't start in college. I got my degree. I averaged 7 points a game. It's okay." He said, "No, son, you told me you're going to graduate 4 years. I'm proud of you. You did it. But you told me you're going to play in the NBA, and you told me you're going to make more money in business than you did in sports." And I was like, "Shoot, do you think you're good enough?" And I was like, got emotional. And I was like, "Yeah, Dad, I do." He said, "Well, go for it, son. Go for it." And I was like, "But Dad, you know, I got an agent." And I ended up playing in the WBL. It was 6'5" and shorter. I made $200 a game, didn't even play. Then I got drafted in the CBA, 6th round in the CBA. I mean, that is down.
Wow. 6th round of the minor league.
Yes, I was a 6th round pick. I was a 99th player taken in the CBA draft. I made the all-rookie team. And the next year I tried out for the Mavericks. And my old man was like, "We're driving." I was like, "What?" I was like, "Dad, they're going to send me a plane ticket, and if I get cut, I can..." "No, son. You're not going to try out for that team. You're going to make that team. Pack up the car. We're driving." And I was like, this dude here, man. We drove to Dallas, and he put that mentality in me, like, "Oh, I'm making this team." And I made the team and became the first ever undrafted rookie free agent to start opening night.
And you start off great. I know your career started like you set the world on fire right away.
It was an incredible story.
You're the American dream, man.
Hey, man, let's go.
American dream.
This is the American dream right here.
This is to Walter and his father. Your father sounds amazing.
He was.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Cheers.
Walter.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Walter Vaughn, we appreciate you being here. On behalf of Bill Green, I'm Jerrold Colton saying thanks for watching Uncorked. We'll see you next time.